in the Barbie world. Life in plastic, it's fantastic. You can brush my hair.
All right, the women's suffrage movement, it started with the Seneca Falls Convention of 1848 and finally ended in 1920 when the 19th Amendment was passed, which gave women suffrage. Susan B. Anthony, she was a primary leader in the women's suffrage movement. She started associations like the National Women's Suffrage Association and wrote novels and had a journal that helped represent women's suffrage. It was created by her and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. This is Alice Paul. She was also in the movement. The thing with her is she had the picket of Washington, D.C., and her and a lot of other activists got arrested, and she went on a hunger strike and wouldn't eat, and they force-fed her eggs through a tube. And so between that and pressure from other protesters, President Wilson decided to urge Congress to pass the 19th Amendment. The Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, it happened in New York. Basically, it was a factory that was primarily women who were immigrants from ages 14 to 23. The owners of the factory didn't have regulations on what to do if there was a fire, so a fire got started and the women on the upper levels couldn't get out, and so eventually they had to all jump from the building, and almost 146 people died that day. And it led to the government having regulations on what to do if there's a fire, and also helped out the International Ladies Garment Workers Union that also was created off of this event. This is Margaret Sanger. She was also an activist, but her big thing was she was a nurse, and the fact that she introduced birth control to the United States. She felt that for women to feel as superior as men, they needed to also know a lot about their health and to have the right to birth childs whenever they wanted to. Rosie the Riveter, she was an icon used for posters in World War II to show women that helped in the industrial area of the war. She was just a symbol for all the women that actually started working during World War II. Flappers are what the ideal women of the 1920s would look like. They were known for being non-caring and liking to dance to jazz and being free and kind of being scandalous. And this is the 19th Amendment, and it was passed in 1920. And with it being passed, it finally gave suffrage to women and ended the women's rights movement.
The National Organization for Women, also known as NOW, is the largest women's feminist organization in the U.S., and they work to gain social equality. They specifically work in reform and abortion, violence against women, lesbian rights, and the constitutionality of equality. The Equal Rights Amendment was made by Alice Paul, and she wrote this in the 1920s, but it was not passed until the 1972. It never was ratified by all the states, and it stated that equality cannot be denied by any state based on sex. And then the baby boom was a period of great increase in birth rate following the end of World War II, and they had 79 million babies were born, and it was caused from the excitement of men returning home from war. Phyllis Schlafly wrote A Choice Not an Echo, and the Power of Positive Women. She was, along with numerous other best-selling books, she was one of the main media spokespersons of the women's rights movement. The birth control pill, Margaret Sanger pushed for development and distribution of a pill that would allow women to control their birth rate because they were dying from stress disorders, from the having too many children. And it was finally in 1960 placed on the market. Feminism, the feminist movement occurred in two waves, and they both involved defining, establishing, and defending equal rights for women. In the second wave during the 1960s, the heavy focus was placed on ending discrimination. The WASP and waves both began in 1942, and the women Air Force service pilots worked to get women in the Air Force, and the women accepted for voluntary emergency service allowed women to become involved in serving their nation. Their involvement freed up a large amount of men to be in combat positions. Betty Friedan wrote The Feminine Mystique, which she did a study at her college, which led to her book that she wrote about the general unhappiness of women and their position in society.
Roe v. Wade was a Supreme Court decision that confirmed a woman's right to privacy when making medical decisions for her body protected under the Fourth Amendment. It gave women the choice with her doctor to decide for or against abortion. The AIDS epidemic brought to attention in the 80s, also known as the acquired immune deficiency syndrome. It was first called the gay disease. It attacks one's immune system that can lead to death. In response, the LGBTQ community became activists in providing healthcare and education for these new diseases. Planned Parenthood was an organization for women created by Margaret Sanger, which provides contraception and other services just for women. They also educate women about family services. Don't Ask, Don't Tell is a compromise that President Bill Clinton proposed, saying that military personnel could not ask nor tell someone's sexual preference in the military. Before this, homosexuals were not allowed in the military. Title IX was a law passed in 1972 requiring gender equity for boys and girls in every educational program that receives federal funding. Sandra Day O'Connor was best known for the first woman appointed in the Supreme Court. She served for 24 years and was a key vote in Roe v. Wade. She retired in 2006. Alright, the Gay Liberation Front was formed by homosexual men and women interested in revolutionizing sexual interactions and relationships. It only lasted 2 years because of poor organization. Amendment 1 in North Carolina was an amendment to the North Carolina Constitution in which limits legal rights related to marriage, to which only male and female could receive rights.
These are the most influential women in women's rights and in this women's suffrage movement. You got Susan B. Anthony, Betty Friedan, Phyllis Schlafly, Margaret Sanger, who was the birth control pill lady, Sandra Day O'Connor, and Alice Stokes Paul. That's all.
Then we made a Guess the Event where you look at the picture and you guess what event went with it. This one was the Wasp and Waves. This one was the Roe versus Wade decision. This one was Flappers. This one was the birth control pill. This one was the Gay Liberation Front. This one was the Equal Rights Amendment. This one was Title IX. And this one was NOW, or the National Organization for Women.
Then we did a matching game for women's rights, and as you can see, they have a little Velcro on them, and for this one, Gay Liberation Front matches with a group aimed at revolutionizing sexual interactions and relationships.